Battle of Kirtipur. The major obstacle to conquering Kathmandu Valley was Kirtipur. Prithvinarayan Saha attempted 3 times for the conquest of Kirtipur. He lost 2 battles and successfully conquered Kirtipur in 1766 AD on March 12. Built as a palace by King Simadev of the Lichavi dynasty, Kirtipur acted as a fort and a means of escape from the Kathmandu Valley. So the conquest of Kirtipur would be tough. Also, Kirtipur gave agricultural yields to the fullest extent. Hence, getting a hold of Kirtipur would be necessary not just to encircle Kathmandu Valley but also to prevent further war and difficulties. Prithvinarayan Saha was on a winning streak before his conquest of Kirtipur. Gorkha had a successful pre-unification campaign and conquered Nuwakot in an interesting way as well. He spent time maintaining administration, a uniform economy, and addressing political dissatisfaction of the time. Hence, 13 years after the conquest of Nuwakot, Prithvinarayan Saha set his eyes on Kirtipur. First Battle of Kirtipur. Prithvinarayan Saha the Spirit was passing his mid-30s. Prithvinarayan Saha observed that Kantipur and 2 other kingdoms of Kathmandu Valley were increasing their military power. New soldiers were being recruited. Foreign trainers were being introduced and towns were being fortified. Hence, the urgency of striking a blow to Kantipur can be justified. Prithvinarayan Saha wanted to attack Kirtipur within 1858 AD, so he did. Most of his courtiers of Gorkha were against attacking Kirtipur. His main commander-in-chief, Kalu Pandey, was against attacking Kirtipur. His royal priest, Kulnandan Dhakal, was against attacking Kirtipur. Yet, Prithvinarayan Saha attacked Kirtipur. He talked to another priest to find out an auspicious date, forced his armies, and encouraged them to defeat Kirtipur. Attack on Kirtipur. Nearly 1,200 soldiers under the leadership of Kalu Pandey set determined to be victor against Kirtipur. Though Kirtipur belonged to Patan, the combined troops of Kathmandu, Patan and Bhaktapur had participated from the side of Malla kings in this attack, which was strategically important place to block the advance of Gorkhali into the valley. King of Kantipur, Jayaprakash Malla, after knowing that Kirtipur could be under attack, informed Bhadgaon or Bhaktapur and Patan and took their combined army for war. Thus the war began. Kantipur attacked from the back, Lalitpur from the front, and Bhaktapur from the center. The war continued for 12 hours. The Gorkhalis were bound to lose and hence took a defensive stance. Kalu Pandey was carefully guiding his army. Both of the parties had similar casualties and the war was continuing forever. Suddenly, the commander-in-chief of Gorkha, Kalu Pandey, was hit by an arrow to the head. Kalu Pandey fainted and the rest of the Malla army killed him. The commander-in-chief of Gorkha was dead. Kalu Pandey, the man that had been the companion, the guide, and the path-setter, was dead. King Prithvinarayan Saha gave the order to end the war, accepting their defeat. Nearly 400 Gorkhalis were killed and 800 Mallas were killed according to an account. It can be presumed that the casualty was the same. Prithvinarayan Saha was in the battlefield in a wooden plankion, palki, supervising the attack. He left immediately to Dohachok and from there to Nuwakot. One of the enemy soldiers wanted to kill Prithvinarayan Saha when they came face to face with one another, but another enemy soldier stopped him, stating that no soldier should kill the king in a battle. A king can only be killed by another king. According to a historian, one Gorkhali fighter named Jayakrishna Thapa had saved Prithvinarayan Saha with a quick move forward while those enemy soldiers were debating. The king, Prithvinarayan Saha himself, only escaped the battlefield by disguising himself as a holy man. Then the king of Gorkha escaped from there and ordered the retreat of the troops. All of the Gorkhalis returned to Dohachok military camp. It was a huge defeat of Gorkhali force in which King Prithvinarayan Saha's principal Kazi and aide Kalu Pandey and several other fighters perished. Later, the king realized and repented that the decision to go to the battle was wrong because Gorkha was fighting single-handedly against the combined forces of 3 kingdoms. Prior to the battle, Kazi Kalu Pandey had also suggested that it was the wrong time to go to the battle against, especially as the odds were against Gorkha. But King Prithvinarayan Saha persisted and prevailed stubbornly on his decision, and he had even accused Kalu Pandey of being afraid of death in leading Gorkhali forces in the battle. Gorkha lost the war. The head of Kalu Pandey was spun around the Kantipur city in celebration, and hence Kantipur cemented its authority over the Kathmandu valley. The first attempt at the conquest of Kirtipur ended in a disaster for the Gorkhalis. Captured by the Malla forces in the same war, seals and swords of Gorkhali forces were placed in Bagh Bhairav temple for all to see. After the defeat of Gorkha in the first attempt at the conquest of Kirtipur, Kantipur and Gorkha conducted a commercial treaty which laid heavily on the side of Kantipur, probably as a consequence of the defeat. The Treaty of Kantipur and Gorkha was official on January 3, 1758 AD. This treaty guaranteed that Gorkha could keep the lands of Patan, but Naldum has to be returned to Kantipur. Also, Gorkha had to allow Kantipur to pass through Nuwakot for trade purpose. Both kingdoms would keep a diplomat in each other kingdoms. Also, both parties would have a lawyer in Tibet to represent their respective kingdoms. The diplomat sent by Gorkha, Tularam Pandey, acted as a spy and wrecked the static balance between the Mahapatras and the king of Kathmandu. This caused tears in Kathmandu's politics, and hence King of Kantipur Jayaprakash Malla imprisoned Tularam Pandey and killed 2 other officers. Kazi Tularam Pandey escaped the prison through a tunnel pathway and reached Nuwakot. After the extreme reaction of King of Kantipur Jayaprakash Malla, Prithvinarayan Saha responded similarly. He annexed Sivapuri Gadi and Palanchok. He renovated the forts of Kavre and Sindhupalchok and kept his soldiers there. The Second Battle of Kirtipur. Prithvinarayan Saha retreated and planned a second attack which would be carried out 7 years after the first. During the break, he imposed a blockade on the Kathmandu valley, hoping it would dampen the morale of the residents of the valley. King Prithvinarayan Saha expanded the geographical, economical and political power of Gorkha to a large extent within 20 years of his rule. He completed the conquest of Nuwakot, defeated the kingdom of Makwanpur and other still strategic locations. He also captured Farping, Chovar, Panga and other areas. So, King Prithvinarayan Saha was quite closer to reaching his destination of defeating Kathmandu. The final stop at that destination was the conquest of Kirtipur. Prithvinarayan Saha had been defeated in the Battle of Kirtipur once, where he lost some of his finest generals and commanders. When Prithvinarayan Saha expressed his desire to attack Kirtipur for the second time, both of his royal press provided their view against the attack. His Kazi Vangsaraj Pandey and Harivangsa Upadhyaya also appealed against it. Despite most of his courtiers opening against Prithvinarayan Saha, he decided to attack again. He sent letters to the court members of Kathmandu, making Jayaprakash Malla suspicious of his courtiers. After knowing that Gorkhali would eventually attack Kirtipur, they kept used stone blocks throughout Kirtipur and hired Botes or Tibetan Nepalese tribes for striking arrows. On 1764, December 16, brother of King Prithvinarayan Saha, Sur Pratap Saha, Kazi Daljit Saha, jointly representing Gorkha, marched towards Kirtipur. However, Kirtipur, instead of battling, closed its all gates. As Kirtipur was surrounded by large walls and forts, it was impossible to penetrate Kirtipur. The only choice for Gorkhali soldiers was to conduct a blockade until the citizens of Kirtipur opened the gates. As Kirtipur is situated on a hill, getting inside Kirtipur became tougher and tougher. Large rocks and boulders were thrown from Kirtipur to the Gorkhali army as well. Hence, the blockade was getting harder to continue. The Gorkhali army had only one alternative. It was to climb through the walls of Kirtipur. Taking the initiative, Commander Sur Pratap Saha climbed the gates of Kirtipur. Unfortunately, an arrow hit Sur Pratap Saha, which struck his left eye. Seeing the commander nearly killed, the Gorkhali army ran away from Kirtipur to Dahachok. It can be presumed that Prithvinarayan Saha generally live in Dahachok so it can get easier to access the valley. Dahachok lies near present-day Thankot. The failure in the siege of Kirtipur is shameful and frightening in many cases. This proved that Kirtipur alone could defend itself independently of the other armies on the other hand. On the other, it proved that Gorkhali army was weak and divided because commanders such as Vangsaraj Pandey did not take part in the war. The youngest brother of King Prithvinarayan Saha, Kazi Sur Pratap Saha, lost his left eye when he was hit by an arrow. Another brother, Qazi Daljit Saha, was seriously injured when he lost one of his ribs. Birbhadra Vasnet, son of Sardar Bhagya Vasnet, lost his life after being hit by a falling stone on his neck thrown by Kirtipur troops from above. Surpratap Saha and Sriharsha Panta fought between themselves to obtain a stairs to climb the wall. They had enmity between them for a long time due to this incident. In this battle, some 300 Gorkhalis lost their lives and remaining troops returned to Dahachok military base camp. Third Battle of Kirtipur. Gorkha lost 2 battles against Kirtipur. Keeping the shame and the humiliation on the one hand, conquering Kirtipur was mandatory to get his hands on Kathmandu Valley. So, Prithvinarayan Saha and Bangsaraj Pandey started discussing strategies and plans to defeat and conquer Kirtipur. It was getting late for Prithvinarayan Saha as well. Lalitpur, Vaktapur and Kantipur were united with each other against Gorkha and Saha. So, Gorkha captured an area called Lutuchok near Balaju. They strengthened their military presence in Sankhu, Changu, Toka, Gokarna, etc. Prithvinarayan Saha then decided to attack Kirtipur in 1765 Bikram Sambat, May 10th. The army was united under Bangsaraj Pandey, Tularam Pandey and General Ram Krishna Kumar. The Gorkhalis' forces took more areas including Panga and Sovar under their control. They surrounded Kirtipur from all sides and stopped everything from entering there. The Kirtipuris could not even manage to harvest their crops from the outlying fields. To worsen their situation, water supply was also cut off. This brought great socio-economic crisis in the Kirtipur kingdom. In Kirtipur, the gates were closed again and the commander of Lalitpur was waiting for Gorkhali troops to arrive. They were ready for siege and were expecting a tough blockade. The people of Kirtipur were worried about the consequences they would face from such a tough siege. They could not gather grains or other materials. Even the 3 kingdoms did not help Kirtipur in the siege, making it easy for Gorkha for the conquest of Kirtipur. Utilizing this moment, Prithvinarayan Saha tried to get the citizens of Kathmandu on his side. For this, he promised that he would provide security and facilities to Kirtipur. The siege continued continuously for 6 months. If the siege continued further, the citizens had to resort to inhuman activities. People were getting naked and rough. Their body was deforming from hunger and poverty. In this battle, Surpratap Saha, Bangsaraj Pandey and Kher Singh participated as military commanders along with the other leaders. Bir Narsingh, son of Kirtipur leader Dhanwanta, was captured by Gorkhalis and put in prison in Nuwakot. It was said that Dhanwanta had sided with Gorkhalis due to his son's imprisonment. The courtiers of Kirtipur met in a council meeting and decided to surrender after the blockade of about 6 months. They thought that it was wiser to surrender rather than to fight. Qazi Dhanwanta Pradhan of Kirtipur Patan sent a secret message to Surpratap Saha that if the lives and properties of the people will be protected by Gorkhalis, then Kirtipur will surrender. Then Qazi Dhanwanta Pradhan brought Surpratap Saha, Bangsaraj Pandey, Kher Singh Basnet and other Gorkhali troops in the middle of the night with fire torches, opening one of the gates, Gopur of Kirtipur. The people of Kirtipur were fed up with the economic blockade. Qazi Dhanwanta Pradhan did not want the attack of Gorkhalis in a broad daylight because there could be a stampede with a great loss of lives and property. Many women and children would have died in the daytime. Finally, in the third attempt, Kirtipur was captured by Gorkhali forces on Wednesday night, 12 March 1766. Finally, after 6 months, the citizens of Kirtipur surrendered and Gorkhalis were provided the right to rule Kirtipur. After a vicious battle and a fell siege, Gorkhali finally captured Kirtipur for the third time. The official date is recounted to be 1766 AD, 12 March, when Gorkha completed the conquest of Kirtipur. Consequences of the conquest of Kirtipur. It is said that many citizens of Kirtipur opposed Gorkha and their soldiers. So, many of them were killed or punished likewise. Avenging the loss he sustained during the first and second failed attempts to conquer Kirtipur, King Prithvinarayan Saha ordered the mouths and nose of all male residents of Kirtipur over the age of 12 to be cut off. Foreign historians also write the nose Hands and ears of children, women and men likewise were cut, which some historians argue is a false as propaganda by the British, who were being economically hampered by the blockade. No matter what, Prithvinarayan Saha conquered Kirtipur and finally surrounded the Kathmandu valley. Only 3 kings were blocking the path for Gorkha to defeat Kantipur, Bhaktapur and Lalitpur. After defeating Kirtipur, the victory of Gorkha over Kathmandu valley became more certain. Thank you.